The rancher only wanted to buy a cow until a little Chinese boy said, "It's my mommy's final day alive." Wyoming, spring of 1890. The town of Serpents Creek boiled beneath the surface. Its soil cracked from drought, its cattle herds thinned by thieves who struck under moonless skies. The people had grown brittle like dry timber before a spark. They needed justice, or at least someone to burn. Finian Croft rode in with nothing but dust in his coat seams and a listless eye for livestock. A rancher with no ranch left to love. He had buried a wife and daughter in the same frost-bitten week 3 winters ago. Since then, he had spoken mostly to his boots and trusted no man beyond a fence post. As he dismounted at the edge of the open-air market, the crowd's attention was fixed on the courthouse steps, now repurposed as a makeshift gallows. A woman stood atop the platform, wrists chained, neck collared with iron. Her dress was torn, her skin bruised in the shape of angry fingers. She was Chinese, a stranger in a town of hard faces, and she stared downward, jaw set, saying nothing. A man nearby rasped to his companion, "They say she slit the foreman's throat and ran off with 2 of his cattle." An outsider, and the only one left after the last stampede. Ain't no kin claiming her. Finn turned, meaning to walk away. Then came a tug. A child's hand clutching his duster. He looked down. A small boy, no older than 5, stared up at him with eyes too big for his face. He wore no shoes, just muddy socks and clothes that swallowed his small frame. His hands trembled as he clutched a small, carved wooden bird. His cheeks were smudged with soot. "It's my mommy's final day alive," he whispered. "Please, sir. Help." Finn froze. For a moment, all he could see were those eyes, so achingly familiar, so filled with the kind of desperate hope only a child dares hold on to. The same eyes his daughter had before the fever took her. He looked back up. The woman on the gallows lifted her gaze just once, her eyes finding her son in the crowd, and Finn's heart buckled. He turned on his heel and stormed toward his horse. From a saddlebag, he withdrew a folded leather wallet worn soft with years. Inside was a metal badge dulled with age, a silver star encircled in rust. Deputy Marshal, it read, an honorary title granted during border conflicts years ago, but enough to stall an execution if probable cause was claimed. Finn marched to the acting sheriff and slapped the badge onto the makeshift desk. "Finian Croft," he said, his voice a low growl. "I'm invoking Section 7. This woman is now a protected witness in an ongoing investigation. The scaffold comes down." The deputy blinked. The sheriff was away, and there was no one to overrule the badge in Finn's hand. "The judge hasn't ruled yet," Finn cut in, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Which means she's still under review. You hang her today, and you hang the law right with her." The execution rope was untied. The woman, whose name he learned was Mai, stumbled off the platform. Her son, Bao, ran to her, arms wrapping around legs too frail to hold his weight. Finn turned without waiting for thanks. His voice was dry as timber. "You've got 24 hours. Stay alive long enough to prove you're worth it." He mounted his horse, the crowd parting like prairie grass before a storm. Mai looked at the man on the horse, her eyes dazed. Bao clutched her hand and whispered, "He looks like he forgot how to smile, Mama. Maybe we can help him remember." The road from town to Finian Croft's ranch was rough, winding through dry brush. He rode ahead in silence, the reins loose in his gloved hands. Behind him, Mai and Bao clung to the back of the wagon he had borrowed. Finn had not spoken more than a dozen words, but his eyes flicked to the mirror every few minutes, watching, measuring. Mai sat hunched, arms wrapped around Bao, her fingers stiff with cold and fear. Her voice came low, barely audible over the creak of the wagon wheels. "He said I'd never leave that scaffold alive." Finn did not turn, but something in his jaw tightened. Mai's words came in fragments. "It happened fast. I was bringing Bao home. That man, he smelled of whiskey. Grabbed me. I pushed back, screamed, then, black. When I woke, he was dead. The alderman said it was clear-cut. Said I was just some foreigner trying to flee with cattle I never touched. She swallowed hard. And then, the tea. Finn's brow furrowed. The tea, he asked, still not looking back. She nodded, her eyes distant. Alderman Pierce. He brought it each morning. Said it was a kindness, special herbs from my homeland. But my hand started shaking. I forgot names, then days. Now. I forget my own strength. As they neared the ridge leading to his property, a group of townsfolk began to gather behind them. Word had traveled fast. A man who once guarded borders now stood accused of sheltering a murderer. Someone shouted, "Croft's gone soft. He's harboring a killer." Finn reined in the horse. He climbed down and walked slowly to the back where Bao sat shivering. He took off his coat, lined with wool worn at the elbows, and knelt. Gently, he wrapped it around the boy's shoulders. Then Finn turned and faced the crowd, 20 men and women, fury boiling beneath layers of grief and blame. His voice rang out, even and low. "Ride on my land tonight if you must, but know this." His eyes swept across them. "I've buried one child already. I'll bury myself before I let another one watch his mother hang." Silence. He helped Mai down from the wagon, holding her steady as they approached his small cabin. Inside, a fire was still alive in the hearth. "It's not a jail," he said flatly. "But don't take me for a fool." "I won't," she nodded. He helped Bao to the cot in the corner, tucking the child in with a gentleness that betrayed the storm behind his eyes. Mai sank onto a wooden stool, her hand shaking. "Why are you helping us?" Finn looked at Bao, who now slept wrapped in his coat, his tiny hand curled like a petal. He shrugged, his voice gruff. "Because someone once helped me, before I forgot how to believe in people." That evening, Finn rode alone, retracing the path Mai had described. The spot near Willow Creek where the foreman was found had been cleaned with too much care. There was no blood, no scuffle marks. It was spotless. He crouched where Mai said she had fallen, his fingers sifting through the damp soil. His thoughts echoed with Mai's words, and with Bao's whisper from earlier that day, the bad man had a snake on his belt. Snake. He scanned the underbrush. Tucked beneath a gnarled root, he saw it, a flash of dull brass. He pulled it free. A belt, worn and cracked, with a coiled rattlesnake stamped into the buckle. He recognized it instantly. Only one man in town owned a belt like this, Alderman Charles Pierce, the man who had called Mai a blight on their town, the same man who had delivered her daily tea. Finn stood slowly, the belt in hand, heart drumming hard. Back at the ranch, the fire flickered low. Mai was coughing, a deep, rasping sound. Her skin was pale, her lips tinged blue. Finn entered quietly and walked to where she lay. He noticed a faint bruise on her forearm, and beside it, 2 tiny puncture wounds. Her eyes fluttered open. "You came back." "I did." He gently brushed her sleeve aside. "Pierce been giving you that tea long?" "Weeks." She hesitated. "Maybe more." Finn stared at the marks. "We need to see Doc Hemlock. Now." The ride through the dark was quick and silent. Doc Hemlock's cabin stood dimly lit on the edge of a frozen pasture. The old man blinked in surprise as Finn carried Mai inside. "Poison," Finn said simply. "Slow kind." The doctor's hands moved fast. He checked her pulse, her eyes, then sniffed the faint residue from a teacup Finn had brought. "Wolfsbane. Black nightshade. Not enough to kill quick, but over time it'll shut her down from the inside out." Mai blinked, dazed. "I thought it was just my nerves." "It was murder wearing patience." Doc shook his head grimly. Finn stood silent, fists clenched. He sat beside her, eyes fixed on hers, and took her hand. It was not an inspection this time, but a promise. "This isn't justice," he said, his voice low. "It's a cover-up. I don't know who they think they're dealing with, but they're about to learn. I bury my own ghosts, not the truth." The wind rose as Finn hitched the last of the supplies to the wagon. Snow had begun falling again, a slow white curtain between the world and time. They had to move. Mai was wrapped in wool, pale and quiet. Beside her, Bao looked up at Finn, his small face etched with worry. "Will Mama be here tomorrow?" The question hit like buckshot. Finn knelt beside him. "Not if we sit still," he said. "But if we move fast and smart, she'll be here. I promise." They headed north, toward Red Elk Hollow. Finn knew this land. Years ago, he had helped a traveling preacher, Brother Jonah, settle in a chapel carved into the mountainside. It had been a sanctuary for the lost. It needed to be one again. But they were not alone. As the wagon turned near Grey Rock Bluff, the first shot rang out. The horses screamed and reared. A second shot split the air, and the wagon tilted hard, sending them spilling out as the spooked horses bolted. 2 men emerged from the trees, Harper's men. "You're trespassing, Croft," one of them barked. "Hand the woman over." Finn stepped in front of Mai and Bao. "She's under my protection." Not anymore. Another shot cracked, and Finn's horse dropped. He fired once, grazing a tree near their feet. Next one lands in your chest. The men hesitated, then fell back into the woods to regroup. There was no time. Finn dragged Mai onto his back. "Bao, hold onto my belt," he commanded. "Do not let go." Snow churned beneath their boots as they pushed through the thicket. Hour after hour, Finn pressed forward, his legs burning, the slope steepening. Ice cracked underfoot, wind tore at his coat, but still, he climbed. Mai coughed. "Finn," she rasped. "Don't talk," he said. "Just breathe." Bao stumbled, and Finn pulled him up, holding the small hand in his gloved fist. "I lost my little girl to a fever," he said softly, more to himself than to them. "To nothing and everything. I ain't losing another child to fire and rope." Night fell. Finally, near the tree line, a light flickered through the snow, dim but steady. The chapel. Finn pushed through the last drift and pounded on the door. It creaked open. Brother Jonah stood there, old and wiry. "Finian Croft," he said. "What devil are you running from?" Finn stepped into the light, Mai in his arms, Bao at his side. "Not the devil," he said. "Just men pretending to be God." The mountain air was calmer by morning. Inside the humble chapel, Maria stirred. She blinked up at the ceiling, then turned to the gentle weight against her side. Bao slept peacefully, one hand clutched in hers. Finn stood near the doorway, watching the sunrise. He turned and placed a folded piece of parchment on the table beside her. Her eyes widened. The letter was in a woman's hand, shaky but fierce. It was from Alderman Pierce's former housemaid, who had died 2 winters ago. It told of how she watched her employer steep strange herbs into Mai's tea, how he had returned blooded on the night of the murder, and how he had threatened her to keep silent. "I found it tucked in her Bible," Finn said. Her truth stayed behind. He placed the other items on the table, the snakeskin belt Bao had remembered, the doctor's signed report confirming long-term poisoning, and the preacher's written testimony, swearing that Mai had come to him for sanctuary long before the murder. "I'm going back," Finn said gently. Mai's breath caught. "They'll hang you." "Then let them try," he answered. "But not before I tell them who they're really burying." By high noon, the town square of Serpent's Creek was filled once more. The gallows stood ready, but the noose swung empty. Finn rode in, dismounted slowly, and walked toward the courthouse steps. Behind him followed the preacher and the doctor. Inside the meeting hall, Finn laid out the evidence piece by piece. His voice was clear, without anger or fear. "This is the truth. A woman silenced by poison. A boy nearly left an orphan. And a man," he held up the belt, so sure of his power he forgot that truth can bleed through snow. "You called her actions murder. She was made weak, scared, and broken, but she never stopped protecting her child." He pointed toward the scaffold outside. "If that scaffold rises, it won't stand for justice. It will stand for shame. A heavy silence followed. The preacher stepped forward. I saw her faith. Even when she thought no one would hear her prayers, God did. The doctor nodded grimly. The council conferred in hushed tones. A gavel struck wood. Mai is hereby exonerated of all charges. The gallows will be dismantled by dusk. A breath passed through the crowd, a wind lifting dust from a forgotten truth. Jed stepped outside into the sunlight. He looked up at the scaffold, and for the first time in years, he smiled. The storm had passed, but not without leaving new roots in its wake. The first to arrive at Finn's modest ranch were not men with guns, but women with baskets of bread and jars of jam. Someone stacked a cord of firewood by the porch with an unsigned note, "Every child deserves a warm night." The cabin breathed again. Mai baked simple meals and left them by the church for anyone hungry. Bao attended the local schoolhouse, returning with chalk on his hands and wildflowers in his pockets. Finn was quiet but steady, mending shutters, replacing roof tiles, and sanding the porch railing. One morning, Mai noticed a small wooden shelf above the fireplace. Two framed photographs stood side by side. One was an old, faded image of a young woman and child. The other was new, of herself and Bao. She reached up, her fingers brushing the edge of both frames. Finn sat nearby, sharpening a tool. "Why stay, Finn?" she asked softly. He paused, then turned to her, his voice low. "Because I remembered what home feels like. It isn't for walls or cattle. It was the sound of his laugh, the smell of your bread. It's his chalk drawings on my floor and your hands fixing what I thought was broken for good." Mai's throat tightened. "You brought us back." Finn shook his head gently. "No. You walk back on your own. I just opened the door." 1 year passed. Frontier Ridge was quieter now, with more laughter than gunfire. On a Sunday morning, the old chapel was filled. Bao stood at the front, reading from a piece of paper. His voice, though small, was clear and proud. "I love my mama, and my papa, too." A stillness fell over the room. Finn sat in the second pew, Mai's hand in his. When Bao finished, Finn rose, walked up, and gently lifted him from the stool. He held him close, then placed his other hand on Mai's shoulder. After the service, they walked as a family up the old hill behind the church, the same place Finn had once stood alone. The land was green now, the soil soft. At the top, Finn reached into his coat and pulled out a simple strip of braided red cord, a piece of silk Mai had once used to tie her hair.